All right, everyone, welcome. I think we are all set to begin. So my name is Erica Wood. I'm the Communications and Outreach Manager for the Mystic River Watershed Association, and I'm delighted to have you on our webinar today. We have Mystic River Watershed Association's Education Manager, Marion Miller, and a special guest, Erica Harimoto, online today. I'm going to pass it over to them to introduce themselves further and get us started on City Wild, Nature in Your Neighborhood. Take it away, Marion and Erica.
Thanks, Erica. Well, I'm so happy to be here today with you all and with two very awesome Ericas to bring you some city wildlife. My name's Marion Miller, as Erica introduced me. It's true. I'm in charge of education programs here at Mystic River Watershed Association. It's a little weird for me to be inside today talking about all the things that are outside, but I'm hoping that you'll be able to envision how you could watch for wildlife outside. I'm going to have my friend and colleague, Erica, introduce herself. She's a wildlife enthusiast, and I'm so happy that she was willing to join me for this. So Erica, your turn.
Thanks, Marion. Hello, everybody. I'm Erica Harimoto. I am a teacher naturalist who had the pleasure of working with Marion in the past and continue to do so on these little fun one-shot programs. And big reptile and insect enthusiast. So happy to talk about some of my favorite animals.
Great, thanks, Erica. So we have this plan for you today, and this was a hard plan for us to do. When we started thinking about doing this, it was like, well, what's our favorite organism? What's a favorite city wildlife that we could do? We had a list as long as our arm. There were so many things we wanted to talk about. So we have winnowed away, and we have a compelling list for both of us that we're going to share some information about organisms you are likely to see in the city or near the city. But by all means, we have not touched on many things that are there. So we picked and chose the things that we thought you might be interested in. But by no means is this an exhaustive city wildlife tour, because it isn't. Right now, we are all home and around our neighborhoods much more than we have been in the past. And I think that offers an opportunity to be out and about and watching for plants and animals, which we both include in the terms of wildlife, that are super local to us. Like, what's right outside your front door? What's in your neighborhood? What's in the vacant lot that you walk by? What's along the river? All of those things are important to life. And the variety of life, particularly in the city and our cities, is important to people. And it's also super interesting to some of us. And I think maybe when we're done here, you might find some of the things interesting too. So I think, let me see, our goal was to have some things that we could share with you and that you could share with young people. So if there happen to be young people here today, that's awesome. I think you might find some things to be interested in. And all the adults in the audience probably know a neighbor or a nephew or a child of their own or a grandchild who is looking to be connected to something this summer, where camps are not functioning and schools are kind of in flux. Hopefully there's something here today that you could help a young person with to be connected with the outside environment. No matter where you are, it's there. So did you want to add anything, Erica?
Nope, I think that sounds good. I'm hoping we can share some information they may not have known before, and hopefully share some information they may have known before, but just in more detail. And hopefully we'll be able to help them find some cool wildlife that they may not have thought existed in the city.
Great, thanks. Okay, so we're just gonna take off and go, and hopefully you'll enjoy this ride. We're gonna ask you at some point to use the chat feature. So if you're comfortable doing that, so we could share some information that way. I also put my contact info in the chat portion, so you can reach out to me if you have questions after the fact, or you would like some resources. And also my colleague Erica Wood has offered to post some information in the chat feature too, as it relates to this presentation. So here we go. All right, so even though a lot of our watershed is pretty urban or citified, so people live in the watershed, there are some surprising places in the watershed, along the river, or at the lake that are just wild in a place that you wouldn't expect. So these are two locations in our watershed. The one on my left is Somerville, Blessing of the Bay, where the river just looks so wide and you're looking over to McDonald Park on the other side. It feels like you are in a different world, and it's such a compelling place, particularly in the summer. The other one on the right is Lower Mystic Lake in Medford, so not far from many people, also in the watershed. And Medford and Somerville are both pretty densely populated communities. Or I guess I misspoke, because Somerville is the most densely populated community in all of New England, I think. So anyway, there's wildlife out there and wild places. But even if you're not in a place that looks super wild, like the Lower Mystic, you might recognize these places that you're seeing. There's the Mystic River Bridge, there's Chelsea. It's being taken, I believe, from the Charlestown side. The Mystic River is full of people, a lot of people. It's very densely populated, our watershed at the lower end in particular. And the river is a working river, so it provides services for so many things that we need. You can see oil storage tanks there. Many of the tankers that come in, or most of the tankers that come into Boston Harbor with oil and gas that we need for our lives, unload off the Mystic River. There also salt, road salt is offloaded in Chelsea on the Mystic River. So the river really serves a lot of purposes. So you can see from all of this, this area serves people well, but there is also room there for wildlife. So even if you're in this part of the watershed, you should keep your eyes open, because I think you'll see some amazing wildlife. Wildlife's important to all of us and important to the health of the environment. So I'm going to show you some quick pictures of city wildlife. All of these organisms were found in densely populated cities. The one on the top, the yellow caterpillar, was found in Somerville. The brown and black woolly bear caterpillar was near the Harbor Walk in downtown Boston. The dragonfly on the green wall was 2 blocks, no kidding, 2 blocks from Times Square in New York City. And the really small insect with the beautiful coloring, that was found in Everett. So things are there, just open your eyes and see. And often it's the insects that are around, plants in particular, but insects also. So here's a quick view of our river and our watershed. And you can see there's quite a bit of green space, parks and green parks along the river, but also parks in different places. So there are many opportunities to get out and look around and see what other things are living there besides people. So wildlife, again, plants and animals, and sometimes fungus. You'll see mushrooms, which is a different category of wildlife, but we're talking specifically today about plants and animals. So rabbits everywhere. You're likely to see rabbits almost anywhere. They're a prey animal, which means that they're food for a lot of animals. And they also have adapted really well to living with people. The conditions that we have are conditions that people like, that rabbits like. And so there's a lot of rabbits and they're everywhere. Also, don't overlook like a tree stump. That's wildlife that's no longer with us, but it's an opportunity to get up close and feel the textures and the wood and see how decomposing wood in particular is so important to soil health in our environment. And then no matter where you are, there is wildlife. There are cracks in the sidewalk where things are growing. There is the strip between the sidewalk and the street, like the one pictured here, where there's much plant life. It's not just grass. Take a look. There's a variety of things. So buses were flying by this space, and there were pollinators. A butterfly came by, several cabbage white butterflies came by, and other pollinators to feed on the flowers here. They're both different types of clover. So take a look. It's everywhere. It's just, you need to be in the mindset finding it, or that the wildlife is there and it's important. So we're going to start with wildlife that is big. And so here's an image of wildlife. It's kind of a special kind of wildlife. We wanted to start with plants because plants are the ones that can take the energy from the sun and turn it into something useful. It's not like it's lunchtime, we're hungry, go outside on this sunny day, open your mouth and eat the sun. That doesn't happen for me or for any other animal. So we need the plants to take the energy from the sun and turn it into food. So super important. Without plants, we don't have any other life. So the plants are super important. So I'm wondering if anybody knows what this tree is. Well, I just gave it away. What these leaves are from, it's a tree, but if you know what kind, you could enter that information in the chat box if you wanted, if you have a guess what it is. It's a beautiful and iconic tree. It's a tree that you find near water. Most often, it's a tree that likes to have wet feet. So trees have specific likes. The different types of trees like different amounts of lighting, different trees like different kinds of moisture in the soil. This is one that likes to have space and likes to have wet feet. And let's see if I can make this happen. There we go. So this is a weeping willow. This particular weeping willow is at McDonald Park. And if you've been to the park, you might recognize the location of this tree, which is just beautiful. There are other ones, many other places along the river, one at Riverbend Park in Somerville by Assembly Row, one in, well, more than one, several at Belle, Marsh. So they're around and they're super important and beautiful. And on a day like this, to be under this tree would be probably the coolest place you could find. So trees are super important. And I was going to ask people who are on this what their favorite tree is. So you have a favorite kind of tree. Think about it. Maybe you can picture it in your mind. Every tree has its own personality. So I would say probably today, weeping willow is my favorite tree. I'm supposed to be moving on and I don't seem, there it is. Okay, there was another plant that we hadn't planned to, Eric and I had not planned to put this in the show, but feel like it's really important. So this plant right here is poison ivy, and it is a plant that everybody should know. So you should know it, and please show any young people who don't know what it is, how it looks. So we always say 3 leaves together. This plant is something that should be avoided. So leaves of 3, let it be. The plant has an oil in it that is an irritant to most people. So not everybody is allergic to poison ivy, but many people are. And kind of an interesting fact, which you may or may not know, is that people, humans, are allergic to it, but most other animals are not, or almost any other animal is not. Birds eat the berries. If you have a dog that's run through poison ivy, you know that that doesn't impact the dog's health at all. So it's not an irritant to other wildlife, but to people. So that's one to be avoided. Let me see what we have next. Oh, another plant, and I'm going to pass it off to Erica on this one.
Alrighty, so Marion was talking about the willow, which benefits a lot of different animals. My plant is still helpful to a couple different things, but it's primarily important for one particular insect. And I'm wondering if anybody can say in the chat if they know what insect really, really depends on this particular plant. And if the caterpillar on the left is not a hint enough, I'm going to hold up its adult form as well. So yeah, so this is the Monarch Butterfly, and its caterpillar form starts off with those beautiful stripes of yellow and black. And when, as an adult, what happens is the adult will lay an egg on the plant, which was called milkweed. And once the egg hatches, you've got the caterpillar, which will eat only the milkweed leaves. And it particularly benefits from milkweed's particular special trait, which is the fact that it's a poisonous plant. Herbivores like deer, rabbits, they're not going to be interested in eating milkweed, but monarch caterpillars absolutely love it and completely depend on it. That's the only plant they will eat. And it gives them that poisonous trait, which then transfers over to its adult form. So they say the orange color in animals often are a warning sign to predators. And in this case, it is definitely the situation. Monarch caterpillars are poisonous to birds that try to eat it. And that's all mostly thanks to that milkweed plant. And the milkweed plant itself has these really big, broad leaves and these pretty pinkish, whitish flowers that almost look like a ball of fireworks. And its name especially comes from the fact that if the plant gets damaged at all, it does release a sort of milky white substance, hence the name milkweed. And sometimes you will get a butterfly that ends up landing on a person instead of on the milkweed plant. And in this case, the monarch butterfly is not interested in laying an egg on you and having the caterpillar eat you. It's actually interested in having some salt off of your body. So in summer, when it's all hot and muggy and everyone's covered in sweat, insects like the sweat bee, butterflies and dragonflies love to land on people and just take a little lick of some salt because it's one of those minerals that isn't as easily come by in the wild. I think Marion, you might be muted still.
So thinking about plants, so important for so many reasons, like the milkweed that is a host to butterflies and other things, might be one way to record what you're seeing is by making old school rubbings. Maybe I'll stop the screen share to show this. So excuse me just a minute. All right, let's see if that works. So I have a leaf here. This one is a black cherry and a paper over it. And rubbing a crayon, or you could use chalk or the side of a pencil, you know, if you hold it angled. This is not as effective as I was hoping it would be. You can get the leaf shape. So that leads me to suggest that for you, for adults or for any young people, it would be possible to do rubbings of the things that you find. You could do bark rubbings, and it would be a way to document what you have. Another sort of old school plan is to make a nature journal. So I think we had some directions about making a nature journal, how you could do that pretty easily. I think I have my slide on, which I don't really want to do, right? Anyway, that all sounds like something you could do, and sorry for the snag, but one way to do it. So sort of connecting people to plants, young people in particular, help them to see the importance and the relationships and also the variety of plant life. So leaf shape or size or the details, how the bark is different on different trees. All of that is really important. All right, so let's go to the next slide. Oops, am I sharing? I hope.
You are, yes.
Great, thank you. Wrong way. All right, so right here, we're going to switch over to some birds. Birds are everywhere, no matter where you are within the watershed, no matter what city, you're likely to hear birds, if not see them. And hearing and seeing connect to nature, but also again, you're hearing different types of birds in different types of places. When they're up in the trees, super hard to find them. And there are also other places where they are super hard to find. So in Cambridge, in Alewife Brook, there is a bird. And also on the smaller picture at McDonald Park last week, I've roughly circled an area there. There is also the same bird, hard to see, and it's an amazing bird. So if you think you know what that bird is, perhaps you could put it in the chat. Can you see it's so camouflaged? It's an amazing bird. It's really a pretty special bird, and you see it throughout the watershed. You'll see it everywhere throughout the watershed. So let's keep going. So you'll see that bird throughout the watershed, and we'll come back to that in a minute, but I wanted to share with you my favorite bird. So these are swallows. These particular swallows are tree swallows. They are my favorite bird. They have a really white belly, beautiful, deep, deep blue iridescent back. They are nest boxers. I'm box nesters, excuse me. So nesting boxes are often built to attract these birds. These birds are important to the ecosystem, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But they also are pretty spectacular to watch. And if you've been in an open area, often near water, so the nest box is in Medford at McDonald Park. The other one flying is in East Boston, near Revere at Belle Marsh. And the reason that they're in places like that is because they eat mosquitoes. So awesome for them for feeding on flying insects. So mosquitoes and other flying insects, which I love insects, but I'm not a fan of mosquitoes. So yay to the swallows. They are absolutely gorgeous. And there's a cousin to these swallows, barn swallows, that you see often at the Mystic Lakes Dam. So those are birds I see in so many different places. And they're there because they're eating their food. And really, that's kind of the key to wildlife. You're going to find the animal in an area if its food is available. So kind of watching the behavior of animals is interesting to me. I don't need to name everything. I don't need to search out a list and check off, like some people like to say, oh, I found this bird and this bird and this bird. I love the behavior. And I find that for young people, particularly young people who are not as attuned to wildlife, watching the behavior is the way to snag them on seeing things that are interesting and exciting, and also helps you to sort of leave your human mindset and think about, what do animals and plants think? And I'm not sure plants think, although there's some evidence that trees know a lot more than we think they do. But the behaviors are the interesting part to me. So I'm not big on naming things. So anyway, swallows, those are swallows. They're awesome birds. They're my favorite bird. And they're mosquito eaters. So I threw this one in, Erica, because we talk about mosquitoes, but we didn't really show mosquitoes. Mosquitoes have a really interesting life cycle. Well, interesting if you can call mosquitoes interesting. Mosquitoes feed a lot of other animals, and they're aquatic in their beginning. Aquatic meaning water-based. So they lay their eggs in water, and then they change into a larva, which also lives in water. It's got these fuzzy gills on it. It's really a funky looking thing. The thing that young people like to know the most or enjoy the most about this thing, the larva breathes through a tube in its butt, in its behind. So you can imagine, if you're a young person, that's really an interesting thought to think about. Then they turn into pupa, and then the pupa, still in the water, grow quickly into adults that fly. So that's a quick down and dirty about mosquitoes life cycle. I'm going to come back to mosquitoes later, and I think Erica has a reference to mosquitoes also. So mosquitoes. So blue herons in both those pictures, a really amazing bird, huge, ancient looking, has this really long bill out front. It is a fish eater primarily, although not all the time. It's found all along waterways, including the Mystic, all along the Mystic. I have seen this bird everywhere. Likes to eat fish, like I said, and it's got a giant bill or beak. That's a great tool for catching fish. It also, as I said, is a really ancient looking bird. In flight, they just are enormous, and their super long legs stick out behind them as they fly. So I'm going to try to do this. I hope to be more successful than the last event at stopping this. So let me just see if I can share a different screen. Fingers crossed, everybody. I hope it works. Am I going to be able to do it? I don't think you're seeing the thing I need you to see. Erica, can you give me a thumbs up if this is visible?
We see the video, but it's not playing yet.
Yeah, okay, that's great. It will be playing. I've got a screen stuck in front of my screen that is making things difficult. Get rid of it, maybe. Well, what I would like to be able to do, but I am unable to do, is to show you this video of a great blue heron eating a fish. It's an awesome video, and sadly, I don't seem to be able to play it.
Marion, your arrow, your mouse was really close to the play button if you're able to.
Oh, great. Yeah, let me try that. Thanks. I have a screen stuck. The Q&A screen is stuck right in the middle of my screen, and I can't, finally, okay. Sorry for the technical error. I'm going to give it another go. Second time's a charm, we could hope. Thanks, Erica and Erica. I appreciate that.
Perfect. There we go.
Awesome. Okay. So again, fish eaters, this was happening in the Mystic, at the Mystic Lakes Dam. And amazing that our water quality scientist happened to be there. He's a great birder and has excellent equipment to record birds. And he got this awesome video, which is amazing. So we can all pretend we're watching National Geographic here, but right here in our watershed. And as the fish goes down, you can see it wiggling. It's a live fish going down this giant neck. And it's a really amazing thing. And I'm only waiting because it will take flight, and that's worth seeing. It's long legs out behind. So again, an amazing bird right here in the watershed, seen all the time. Hard to see sometimes, but worth looking for. Really an awesome bird. So let's just backtrack 1 second. So I'm saying things are in the watershed. You can see them all the time. One place you can find a list of organisms that have been found in the watershed is through the app iNaturalist. I don't know if people know that or use that, but within iNaturalist, there's a project that is focused on the Mystic, And so people have posted wildlife sightings, their images of plants and animals that are seen in the Mystic River, and also it's mapped so you can see what was seen where. So I find that a helpful tool sometimes. I think that information, the link is going to be in the chat. So check it out. All right. So the other bird I'm going to talk about is an iconic bird, also an amazing bird, something that you don't think you might see in our really densely populated watershed. This bird is an osprey. Ospreys, as you can see, are fish eaters, definitely fish eaters. They are around the Mystic because they're a fish, of course. And they like to nest on platforms. So this platform nest, it's a picture from the other day, is at Belle Isle Marsh. Very urban, but an open marshland. And I guess I heard yesterday that Belle Isle Marsh is the largest saltwater marsh in the Boston area. And it's right there, right on the edge of Boston and Revere. And here's the nest. And then, as you can see, there's a little nestling in there. I think there's 3 chicks and a giant nest. So one day when I was there, the female was carrying in this giant, huge stick to add on to the nest. Even though the eggs had already hatched out, for whatever reason, she was bringing more wood to the nest, which was kind of an interesting thing that was happening. All right, so osprey, who knew? They're similar to eagles, which we also have bald eagles in the watershed, and very adapted to fish eating. You can see large talons, claws that can grab a hold of fish, and also very sharp beak that can help to pull the fish apart. So well adapted. Again, the behavior is interesting to watch. If you get to see one that's just not flying over, watch what it's doing. It's really interesting. All right, I'm passing it to you, Erica.
All righty, so another kind of old animal. Turtles have been around for quite a while, as have all reptiles. The particular turtles I'm going to talk about are aquatic turtles, which, as you can see in this picture, have sort of a more flattened shell compared to a terrestrial turtle, a turtle that lives on land. So examples of those would be tortoises, box turtles. Those have more of a round kind of shaped shell versus the aquatic turtles like the painted turtles, the sea turtles. They all have more of a flattened shell. So this particular turtle in this image, both of them are painted turtles, and I think they're just really pretty turtles because they look like a turtle that just someone took a can of paint and a paintbrush and just started making stripes all over them. There's a lot of yellow right on the face, and then a lot of reds and oranges on the shell and on the rest of the body. So I'm a huge fan of these painted turtles because of their coloring. And I'm not sure if you don't know where the painted turtle's eyes are, or in general turtle eyeballs are. Mary, you might need to help me with pointing it out, but it's going to be that sort of slightly black with framed with orange circle that's sort of right at the tip of it. And they are sort of forward-facing eyes because they are they're omnivores. They're both plant eater and they are a meat eater, depending on what they find in the water. So you will often see them in a river on top of rocks or logs, sort of basking, because as cold-blooded animals, they are taking in the sun as a source of heat to warm up their bodies. So you will most likely see them kind of perched on things, just kind of hanging out in the sun. And Marion, if you could switch over to the next screen. So it can be hard to see them, especially from a distance, because they're little turtles. They're generally only about 8 inches long. You might find larger turtles that are the red-eared sliders. Those can get significantly larger. And then you have like a larger turtle, like a snapping turtle. Those can get much, much bigger and a bit more easier to see. But the most common turtle is probably going to be the painted turtle. And sometimes, if you're lucky, On a day where the water's more clear, not covered in plants, you might be able to see a turtle swimming, which is a lot of fun to watch because it's sort of like a doggy paddling, but it's just the rest of the body's not moving, only its little feet are. So it's really, really cute to watch. And I had the fortune of seeing a turtle swimming around in a body of water recently, except it was surrounded by all these tadpoles. And the tadpoles were just kind of hanging out on some nearby vegetation. And at first I thought the turtle just wanted some space because it would chase after the tadpoles, get really, really close, and then try to bite them. And I was watching for a while and it didn't seem to be particularly happy about the space it had. So I started realizing it wasn't so much about the space that the turtle had as much as it was about trying to eat the tadpoles. And so unfortunately, in the 5 or so minutes I was watching this turtle try, it did not once succeed in biting a tadpole, but it was very enjoyable to watch. And I think at this point, I'm going to switch over to my other camera so I can start showing, so I can show you some specimens that I've got. So I'm going to temporarily turn this off. Let's see if you can see this now. So what I've got here is the shell of a snapping turtle, which compared to, say, my hand is significantly larger. So snapping turtles can get quite large. This is still not a really large turtle. It's smaller than what its other companion snappers might look like, but it is still a large turtle. And then in comparison to that, I've got a smaller turtle shell. And this one is, I believe we said, was this red-eared slider shell. So smaller than the snapper. Painted turtles are actually even smaller than this. And I'm hoping you can kind of see with this is that sort of more flattened look to them. And that makes them more streamlined so that the water can pass over that easily. And I'm also gonna now take the time to show you this. This is the skull of a snapping turtle. All turtles, both the red-eared slider, painted turtle, box turtles, snapping turtles, they will all, because they're omnivores, they will take any opportunity to try and sample anything that kind of comes across them, especially because they're drawn to movement. So if you wiggle your finger in front of a turtle's mouth, generally not recommended, especially in front of a snapper, they will try to bite it. So the interesting thing about them, though, is turtles, like birds, have a beak. So they don't have any kind of teeth in them, but they do just have this sort of really strong jaw. And that is sort of where all the pain, I guess I would say, comes from when they're biting. It's not so much any kind of teeth digging into you as it is just the strength of the jaw. And I think at that point, I'm going to switch back to Marion.
Okie doke. All right, so turtles, aquatic animals, and I know people have seen them in the Mystic. I've seen them many places. I'm switching over to a shellfish. So I don't know if people know or not, but the lower part of the Mystic, below the Amelia Earhart Dam, the river is tidal, meaning that the ocean, when the tide comes in, comes up the river and mixes with the fresh water of the river. The dam, the Amelia Earhart Dam that is in Somerville and Everett, stops the tidal salt water from going further up the river. It used to be that the river was salty when the tide came in, or mixed brackish water, mixed salt and fresh all the way up to Medford Square, but they built the dam to stop that from happening. So brackish water, which is mixed salt and fresh, provides habitat for other animals. So I want to talk about oysters because oysters are such an interesting animal. So when I was putting this together, I thought, yes, oysters. Oysters are great at filtering water. It's an animal that people know. It's something that you don't think about. Where does it live? It likes brackish water. So salt and fresh mixed together. They're very common in that, as in estuaries, which is salt and fresh water. So I asked around, I asked my colleagues, like, where are oysters in the Mystic? And it turns out that nobody knew. That No one knows that if there are any oysters in the Mystic anymore. My guess is no, but if anybody knows of where they are, please let me know. I would like to know that. So oysters, like other shellfish, but oysters in particular, are filter feeders, which means they open their shell, water flows through, they filter out algae and animal life, so plankton that's in the water that they're filtering through, and that's their food, but they also have qualities of improving water quality. So when that's happening, in the Mystic in particular, since that's what we're talking about, the sediment of our river has heavy metals and other toxins in it. The water quality itself is very good, but the sediment, because we're such an industrial river, have a history of industry, and there are so many people around the river, has a lot of pollutants in the sediment. Again, not the water, but in the sediments. And so since oysters are near the sediments or anchored to the sediment, they would pick up pollutants. So if you know where there are oysters in the lower Mystic, I would love to know where they are, but also don't eat them. So that's kind of an important message. Any shellfish you find, you might find mussels in the lower Mystic, you might find clams in the lower Mystic, certainly gulls, herring gulls, and other gulls that are birds of the Mystic, and you can see some right here, would be eating shellfish, and you'll probably see shellfish piles of shells where the gulls have flown up high and dropped the shellfish from a height to break open the shells. So there are shellfish that live in the river. Don't eat them because they're toxic. So I wanted to just let people know that that's the case, pass that along to people. Also, some fish that you catch in the lower Mystic shouldn't be consumed either. And we have information about that on our website. I think Erica Wood was going to post the link, but the link is here on the slide too. So the reason that this picture is here, this is at Draw 7 Park in Somerville, which is behind Assembly Row, looking towards the Encore Casino, is because historically there were oyster beds, and there were oyster beds that were right around where the casino is currently is sited. And so that's why I have this picture. I also have heard reports that historically they were in Chelsea Creek, which is further down towards Boston Harbor, but there are apparently no oysters now unless someone knows about it and will tell me where they are. So interesting. There are freshwater clams and mussels that are also important further up the river. Small, like fingernail clams. Maybe I can show you this if I stop share. These little guys are freshwater clams, and there are also freshwater mussels. There we go. That are commonly found in the lakes and also in the river. And those are important food sources to a lot of animals, one that Erica's going to talk about in a little while. So those are not human food per se, but they do feed wildlife. So again, going back to sort of my original premise, you'll find an animal in a place where its food is available. And that's important to know. So if you see an animal, look around, what's it eating? If you see an animal, look around, where's its shelter? If you see an animal, look around, where is it getting water? Where is it having its needs met? So let me see if I can, there. So of course, the river is full of fish. That's invisible, you don't see them, hard to know that they're there. But every spring, I think if you've seen one of my videos before, you listen to other people that are doing webinars with Mystic River Watershed Association, the fish are a big deal. And these little cuties, my favorite fish, they're river herring. Every spring, they migrate up the Mystic River to lay eggs. They're an interesting fish in that they live in the ocean almost all of their lives. They have to spawn or lay eggs in fresh water. So this spring, they traveled up the river, up to Mystic Lakes and further on up to Horn Pond in Woburn. to lay eggs. These fish, after they lay their eggs, fertilize the eggs, they turn around and head back to the ocean where they'll live until next spring to come back. So all those eggs hatch out. There's a bunch, like hundreds of thousands, probably millions and millions of baby little fry in the whole watershed system right now that will live there all summer, eat and eat and eat. They eat zooplankton, which are small little animals in the water. So I showed you mosquito larvae. There are other animals that are similar to mosquito larvae that also live in the river that the fish eat. And they'll eat and eat and eat and eat until they get to be about 3 inches long. And then they'll turn around and head to the ocean. They've never been there before. They know how to do it. They get there. Anyway, it's fascinating and it's all invisible. So if you chance to go up to the edge of the river or to one of the lakes and take a look, you are likely to see a bunch of little fish fry, very tiny little fish. This is the size of, whoa, river herring. I'm having trouble with this. River herring, when they're about 2 weeks old, they're about that big. They're really small. And there are many other fish. So again, invisible, they're there. They're there because the conditions are right for them and we don't see them. There is a community science project that we have going that is counting the number of river herring. I think that Erica Wood was going to post that link so you could find out more about that if you wanted to know more about the migrating fish. A lot of scientists are studying the migrating fish. So scientists are also studying what other fish are in the river as well. And so I just wanted to share this quickly because again, the fish are invisible. You don't really ever see them. These fish were all present last year in Lower Mystic Lake on the dates listed in May, June, and July. And there's some evidence, and these scientists were studying fish that follow the river herring. So the American eel, which is number 7, naturally is migrating and it cross migrates from the river herring. That's kind of a long story. I don't have time to tell you now, but the theory is some of these fish follow the river herring up the river because they're eating river herring. River herring is an important food fish. So what these scientists did is they came and they took samples of the water, just the water. They took it back to the lab. They had the ability to look at the water and identify the DNA, just the water, that's all they had, to identify the DNA signatures of these 17 fish. So I think that's pretty amazing. Again, invisible, but interesting to me. All right, so Erica, it's off to you again.
Alrighty, back to bugs because I stuck in the monarch before and now we can talk even more about insects. So these guys are the autonites, the dragonflies, and we also have a damselfly included as well. So if you don't know the difference, the dragonflies with the 2 top left and the right photos, they are generally going to be a thicker bodied insect with their wings spread horizontally when at rest. Damselflies in comparison, like this blue-fronted dancer at the bottom, has the wings kind of going alongside the body and is generally a bit more on the thinner and a bit more delicate looking compared to the dragonfly. But both dragonflies and damselflies are amazing aerial hunters. They are carnivores and major mosquito hunters. So their wings and their sort of ability to hunt makes them be able to fly and intercept a flying insect. And when they get close enough to the insect, they have a specialized mouthpiece called a labrum that is attached to an extendable organ that essentially lets their mouth kind of shoot out and grab a hold of prey and then bring it back to the body where they can eat, so they can eat it. And I just find that really fascinating because they're just such a small yet amazing ambush predator for flying insects. And particularly they're another major mosquito eater, which is why they are also one of my favorite insects. And I'm gonna switch over to the next screen because I want to show the fact that this is them in their larva form. So similar to mosquitoes, dragonflies and damselflies lay their eggs in water, and when those eggs hatch, the larva form are also an aquatic larva. So they live in the water until they pupate. And in this state, you can see that the damselfly, again, it still has that sort of narrower, smaller body compared to the dragonflies, which have that still thicker bodied appearance. And even in the aquatic stage, they are still major mosquito eaters. They're just hunting the aquatic version, the larva of the mosquitoes. So adults and babies, dragonflies are hunting mosquitoes, which I love about them, because nobody likes mosquitoes, even though I like insects. And I'm going to pass the next screen. So oftentimes when you're going to see dragonflies, they're because they're so small and fast moving, it's not always easy to find them, but they're so frequently seen in like nearby water that it's actually kind of easy to see them. So you're going to find them kind of perching on any kind of structure, really. Sometimes they'll be on logs or sticks coming out of the water. Sometimes they'll even be on the first couple images Marion showed of the animals you find in wildlife, they'll just be hanging out on a piece of board vertically standing in the middle of the city. So they generally will be, there's different species. Some are meadow species, some are pond or aquatic species. Both of them you can kind of find anywhere you're going to find mosquitoes or water, because where the life cycle needs are met. And every so often, like the butterflies, they will land on people as well, just to have some more of that salt. And because they are such amazing mosquito hunters, they are also unfortunately part of the circle of life, and are sometimes prey to other things. This is a green heron that was a bit more agile than a dragonfly was, and managed to catch one, and had a very delicious, very protein-based meal because of both their diets. I just find that such a beautiful image of a green heron eating a dragonfly.
Oops, I skipped ahead, Erica. I'm so sorry. It is a beautiful image. So one thing would be good to think about when you're helping young people to be connected with nature is that if you can help them to make a model of something they found, that's a way to have a closer experience with the actual thing. So if you were going to make a dragonfly, think about what things you would need. It needs a stout body, it needs wings, it has 6 legs because it's an insect, and it has a big head with big eyes. Eyes are important to this organism. So here's a quick down and dirty DIY, make a dragonfly that you could do. And really, like I said, it's a way to focus on what are the attributes of this animal. And also for young people, how is this different from us? What does this animal do that's different than us? And what is its body structure that's different than us or the same? I'm going to stop this share for just one quick minute. I know we're getting short on time, but I wanted to show you a model of a butterfly, super easy. So cut out the shape of the butterfly. I made a monarch. It should just be light colored paper. Erica and I have a colleague that we work with sometimes, Helen, who really always does this craft. And I had never appreciated it until I saw it in action with young people. So this is a pipe cleaner, just stuck through. So it's a butterfly wing, and these can be the antennae. And the thing about the light paper is it flutters. And so there's a chance to be like a butterfly or think like a butterfly. And for the younger set, that's like the coolest thing ever. And it can be any kind of butterfly. It can be their own made up kind, but a way to make a model. You could make it out of clay, you could do a drawing, whatever you can help young people to do that helps them to see details of an organism that's really helpful in understanding more. So just a quick hack. All right, Erica.
All right, so now I've got a bit of a mystery animal for you. This is another aquatic animal, and I'm gonna just show some pieces of it until we kind of get all the parts of it, and then kind of see if people can figure out, at what point people figure out what animal this is. So this particular animal is a mammal to start with, and it has this really long naked tail that's completely hairless. Along with that, it's got these paws. This particular image on the top is its back paws with these really, really fearsome looking claws. But the claws are not so much to help with hunting as it is to help it dig in the bank where it lives. So it's a burrow making animal. And then the next image.
Where is it? I'm stuck. Oh, there it is. Got it.
All right. So additionally to that, it is grasping on as its front feet, and it's grasping onto into one of its favorite foods, plant matter. So it's an omnivore. It does eat those oysters and mussels that Mary mentioned earlier, and it has these sort of hands that are capable of grabbing onto things. And then I believe we have two more images. This is what that's okay. This is what the face and body look like. So it's got it's got whiskers on it and ears that I don't believe are that visible, probably to help it so that it doesn't get water in its ears. And then covered in hair or fur. So this particular animal is, as somebody guessed, a muskrat. And like its name implies, it is in the rodent family and is a major fur animal. So back in the day when there was fur trapping industry, this was one of the animals that used to get trapped for its fur. And I'm going to try to demonstrate that in the next image, both the next image and the specimens. I think the next image just kind of shows more the body.
Oops.
But that's Marion's, oh no, she got that, okay.
Yeah, technical difficulties, my apologies.
It's just some more images of the entirety of the muskrat. So just kind of seeing it from different perspectives. It does live in water and looks almost like a beaver, except for the fact that the tail is more rounded. And instead of a house of sticks, it's a house of dirt because it just digs in it. And I am going to switch over now to my phone to show you what the fur, why it was particularly hunted for its fur.
Okie doke. Well, while Erica's setting that up, I will say that muskrat are seen quite widely in the watershed. I've seen several of them at Alewife Reservation in Cambridge. They're seen in the river in Medford in particular. I've seen one at Mystic Lakes. So eyes open. They're an unusual animal, but they're very abundant.
Alrighty, so I'm hoping you can see this now. This is what the muskrat looks like. It's not very large at all. This is in comparison to my hand and comparison to that red-eared slider shell we saw earlier. And then I'm going to zoom in really, really close to the fur and then run my finger along it, and hopefully you can kind of see just how soft that fur is from me touching it. So this particular animal was hunted because it was such a soft feeling fur, and people wore it as hats, people put it on scarves. It was hunted for those reasons. All right, Marion, I'm going to pass it back to you. I turn this off.
Okie doke. And I noticed that we are almost out of time. So let's see what we can do. So again, connecting youth to the wildlife that's right outside your door, whether you're in the city, in a very urban area, or if you trek out to a greener space. You could build a place where an animal could keep cool. You could build a tiny world for an ant. You could make an imaginary town. All of those things using plant materials that are found. Start thinking about connections. What do butterflies and fish have in common? They both have scales. We didn't talk about scales on the wings of butterflies, but they're there, and they can be seen with a magnifying glass. and both come from eggs. So trying to make connections. Keep your eyes open. Things are out there all the time. You might find a feather, you find seeds, so many things that you could find. You could take a nature hunt. So maybe today we're looking for textures. We're finding something from nature that's smooth or rough or bumpy or fluffy. Create a quick kind of hunt. I used rubber stamps because I had them. Today we're looking for dragonflies and bees and ants and butterflies. How many can we find? And using tally marks to count them. Take a close look at a worm or any other item that a young person is willing to take a close look at. You get to know things when you stop and look. So super easy to involve people in seeing and understanding wildlife. And wildlife and biodiversity is so important, particularly in our urban area. We don't want to lose the wildlife that we have. So I guess that's it. If you have questions, shoot me an email. Follow up. Thank you for joining me today. It was fun to work with you, and I'm glad we had a chance to share some of our favorite wildlife with all of you. Do you want to say anything, Erica, as a goodbye, or are you all set?
Just want to say thank you to all the people who joined in on attending this. It was a lot of fun to share what we know, and it was amazing to work with you again, Marion. Always fun to do a program with you.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, and keep your eyes open, everybody, outside. City or not city, there's wildlife to be seen. And that's it. Thanks.